Greetings everyone. Welcome back to Storytime Recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the film from 2007, Teet. Before we start, I hope your day be filled with sunshine and smile. Enjoy the story. The movie opens with the family lounging in the sun. When Bill and his new wife Kim watch their kids Brad and Dawn swimming in a kid pool, Bill warns his son Brad not to annoy his sister, but the youngster becomes irritated and cries that they are not siblings. Brad is showing Dawn his belongings while the step-siblings are splashing around. Suddenly, the parents hear Brad crying and hurry to him, finding a cut on his finger. The scene then jumps to a few years later, when Dawn is a teenager and the spokesperson for The Promise, a Christian abstinence organization that encourages young boys and girls to stay virgin until they find the person they want to spend the rest of their lives with. During her speech, Dawn fixes her gaze on a man named Toby, and afterward, she meets with her friends Alicia and Phil, who then introduce her to Toby. The two seem to click right away.
It's you know.
Upon Dawn's return home, we observe that her mother's health is declining and her father is taking care of her. Later, when Dawn is brushing her teeth in the bathroom, her brother Brad appears out of nowhere. When Dawn arrives at her school the following morning, she is teased by other students for abstaining. When advocate Ryan, who likes her, tries to talk to her, one of the bullies blocks him right away. Students study the reproductive system later in the course, but because the school is conservative, the books only address the female reproductive system. Ryan raises her hand and asks the teacher why it is banned to study female reproductive parts, but not male reproductive organs. Dawn raises her hand and says that women are different since they are born with a feeling of modesty. When the class realizes this, they all begin to laugh at her, but Toby defends her by stating that he agrees with her. Dawn and her pals head to the theater after school, only to find that the film they'd like to see is R-rated. As a result, they wind up seeing a kids' film, and even though their friends make out notice Dawn and Toby, they still awkwardly stare at one another. The scene then switches to Brad, who is lounging with Melanie. When Melanie inquires about the status of his damaged finger, he replies that Dawn bit it when they were younger. Later, Dawn and her friends go to a lake that is a well-like spot for makeout sessions in their neighborhood. While the others go swimming, Toby and Dawn spend some alone time talking about their virginity. Toby claims to have had sex a year ago and is still dealing with the guilt, but Dawn tells him she is a virgin and that he is stronger than ever because he has been able to resist his sexual cravings even after his experiences. Dawn touches herself that night while laying in bed and daydreaming about being married to Toby, but she soon stops herself out of guilt. Dawn is late for school the following morning, and she ignores Toby this time. Afterwards, she phones him from the locker room and tells him she's worried about her feelings for him. Toby expresses his love for her as well, and Dawn advises them to stop hanging out so they can maintain their integrity and resist giving in to temptation. Dawn listens in on Brad and Melanie fighting at home. Dawn tries to talk to her brother after Melanie departs, but Brad tells her that her whole abstinence is a lie and that she has been keeping herself for him. He then pushes his stepsister to have an intimate relationship with him, which upsets Dawn and makes her leave in a rage. Feeling angry and hurt over the incident, she calls Toby and asks him to hang out at the lake. They confess to one another that they have been seeing each other unclothed. The two then jump into the lake and start kissing, but Dawn tells him not to because she wants to remind him of their purity. After that, they go to a nearby cave and cover themselves in a blanket. Dawn feels uncomfortable and tries to persuade Toby to go back. Unhappy with Dawn's reaction, Toby becomes extremely aggressive with Dawn, accidentally pushing her head into a rock and knocks her unconscious. Toby tries to push himself on Dawn as she is unconscious, but he suddenly yells in pain. Dawn finds blood on his palm and is perplexed by all that is happening. When Toby discovers his belongings has fallen to the ground, he screams in terror and flees the area, leaving Dawn stunned and unable to comprehend what just happened. Dawn tears the posters from her wall that night, furious as she repeats Toby's screams in her mind and considers how he may have been her husband. She is asked to speak again at the Promise conference the next day, But Dawn gets so nervous that she only mumbles a few strange words. Ryan then comes up to her and asks if she's okay. After driving her home, Ryan asks her out on a date, but she declines and leaves. Ryan feels foolish and goes back to her house. But Brad confronts him and gives him a hard punch and tells him to avoid Dawn while he's still uncomfortable about the attack. Dawn makes the decision to return to the cave in order to process her experience. But when she discovers a tiny crab crawling on Toby's belonging, she screams in terror. Dawn tosses her purity ring off a cliff since she thinks she is no longer a clean woman. And when she gets home, she carefully takes the sticker off of her anatomy textbook. When Dawn first sees the intricate depiction of the female genitalia, she is shocked. After some internet investigation, she determines that she has vagina dentata. According to a folktale called Dentata, a woman's vagina is said to possess teeth, and if she makes love to a man, it could cause emasculation or even result in death. Dawn visits a gynecologist the following day to determine what is wrong with her. She tells the doctor that she wants to be checked out to make sure her body is not undergoing any mutations. When the doctor discovers that Dawn has never been a gynecologist, he takes advantage of her and molds her, telling her that she is experiencing womanhood and that no judgments would be made about her sexual life. He begs her to breathe through the agony while posing as a test, and she feels like he's grasping her. He twists her around in an attempt to free his hand, and Dawn discovered that his fingers had been amputated when he finally let go. Dawn lets out a terrified cry, shocked by what has just happened. Dawn decides to head back to the lake to see if anything strange is happening when she runs across a police officer driving Toby's car on the way back and gives her the order to stop her bike on the side of the road. Dawn sees the police are dragging Toby's body up. Back at the house, Dawn's sick mother Kim abruptly passes out on the ground. Unfortunately, while she lies on the floor, her arrogant stepbrother Brad and his girlfriend ignore her and carry on having sexual relations. Later, when Dawn discovers her mother in such a state, she rushes her to the hospital. After having a nightmare, Dawn wakes up in the hospital, and her father tells her to go home and rest. When Dawn gets home, she discovers Brad and his girlfriend fighting once more. Angered, she goes to Ryan's house and tells him she has to give herself in to the police. Dawn tells Ryan that she has teeth down there, which has almost killed two people. Ryan doesn't understand Dawn, though, so assuming Dawn is scared, he comforts her and offers her some medicine in the hopes that it will calm her. In the scene that follows, while Ryan lights candles and plays soothing music, Dawn is taking a bath. A little while later, Dawn emerges from the bath and declares she wants to go to the police station. Ryan, however, tells her that the drugs might make her dizzy and that she should go tomorrow. After pouring herself some wine, Dawn lies down on Ryan, who assures her that he will always be there for her. Ryan then climbs on top of Dawn and attempts to have a little fun with her. Dawn gives her permission at this point, and they eventually make love, this time without her teeth. While this is going on, the doctors discover a strange structure in Toby's body that they are unsure of since it resembles a shark or eel tooth, but testing reveals it is indeed a human structure. When the medics ask the gynecologist where he is having surgery to reconnect his fingers, he won't say anything about how his fingers were severed. The following morning, Ryan and Dawn are having sexual intercourse again when Ryan gets a call from a friend who gloats that they wagered on whether Ryan would score with Dawn. This infuriates Dawn. Ryan and her friend make fun of Dawn's abstinence, saying they never believed it was sacred. Suddenly, Dawn bites off Ryan's belongings with her teeth, and Ryan starts crying for his mother. Dawn then learns that her mother has passed away when she visits the hospital. At home, as their argument intensifies, Bill punishes Brad for essentially killing his wife, to which Brad responds that he never should have married Kim in the first place because he has always had emotions for Dawn. Brad also expresses his rage at Bill for making Dawn his sister. When Brad lets his dog go on his father, Bill retorts that Dawn adores him too, which makes Brad stop. Later, Bill and Melanie went to the hospital. Melanie informed Dawn that they had heard their mother scream, but Brad reassured her that it was nothing to be alarmed about because she does this regularly. Enraged, Dawn returns home to exact revenge. She gets dressed up and enters Brad's room, attempting to attract him. Brad is taken aback and wonders why she is acting so quickly, but Dawn teases him by claiming that he is afraid. The two then have sexual intercourse, and Brad says that throughout this time, They both knew that it would eventually happen in the midst of the act. Brad remembers that Dawn bit his finger when he was younger, but it wasn't her mouth. Instead, Dawn's vagina bit off his belongings, which she released onto the floor. Brad then gave the order for his dog to attack Dawn, but the dog began eating his egg roll instead. And a few seconds later, Dawn left the room while Brad crying in agony. Following that, Dawn gets on her bike and leaves her house to travel outside of the town in quest of a new life. However, while traveling, her bike tire blows out, forcing her to travel on foot in order to avoid the police. Eventually, an elderly man walks up and offers to give her a ride. Dawn nods off briefly on the way, and when she wakes up, she finds the elderly guy has locked the doors. He licks his lips creepily, suggesting a sexual favor in exchange for letting her leave. At the end of the movie, Dawn hesitates for a moment before grinning sinisterly at the camera and the elderly man.